Under capitalism, workers are alienated from the products of their labor and from their true human essence. The bourgeoisie produces its own gravediggers. Accumulation of wealth at one pole is at the same time accumulation of misery, agony of toil, slavery, ignorance, brutality, mental degradation at the opposite pole. The capitalist system is productive and progressive, but it also breeds its own destruction. Capital is reckless of the health or length of life of the laborer unless under compulsion from society. In capitalist society, capital is independent and has individuality, while the living person is dependent and has no individuality. Capitalist production begets, with the inexorability of a law of nature, its own negation. The need of a constantly expanding market for its products chases the bourgeoisie over the entire surface of the globe. The ruling ideas are nothing but the ideal expression of the dominant material relationships. The secret of profit-making in capitalist society is to sell commodities for more than their actual value. In proportion as the bourgeoisie, i.e., capital, is developed, in the same proportion as the proletariat, the modern working class, developed. The ruling ideas are nothing more than the ideal expression of the dominant material relationships. The bourgeoisie has stripped of its halo every occupation hitherto honored and looked up to with reverent awe. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. A commodity appears at first sight an extremely obvious, trivial thing, but its analysis brings out that it is a very strange thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties and theological niceties. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Capitalism contains the seeds of its own destruction through periodic economic crises. The real barrier of capitalist production is capital itself. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness. Between capitalist and communist society lies the period of the revolutionary transformation of the one into the other. The rate of surplus value measures the degree of exploitation of labor in a capitalist system. The worker becomes all the poorer the more wealth he produces, the more his production increases in power and range. Freedom consists in converting the state from an organ superimposed upon society into one completely subordinate to it. World history would indeed be tedious if it were nothing but a repeated playing of the same old scenes. No social order ever disappears before all the productive forces, for which there is room in it, have been developed. Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. The capitalist system is a contradiction in itself, and in no way leads to a harmonious, stable society. The development of modern industry, therefore, cuts from under its feet the very foundation on which the bourgeoisie produces and appropriates products. In the social production of their life, men enter into definite relations that are indispensable and independent of their will. The material conditions of society directly influence its social and political superstructure. History does nothing. It does not possess immense riches. It does not fight battles. It is men, real, living, who do all this. The country that is more developed industrially only shows, to the less developed, the image of its own future. Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. Revolutions are the locomotives of history. The productive forces at the disposal of society no longer tend to further the development of the conditions of bourgeois property. From the outset, the theory of alienation is linked to the idea of the self-realization of the human species. In communist society, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes, society regulates the general production and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow. The ruling class has only one way of settling its contradictions, and that is to find an ideology that will preserve them. The ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. Labor is not the source of all wealth. Nature is just as much the source of use values, and it is surely of such that material wealth consists as labor, which itself is only the manifestation of a force of nature. Labor is the source of all wealth and culture. In a society where the individual is alienated from the product of his labor, the process of production becomes a torment. The value of a commodity is determined by the socially necessary labor time embodied in it. Mankind always sets itself only such tasks as it can solve. Private property has made us so stupid and partial that an object is only ours when we have it, when it exists for us as capital. Revolution is the locomotive of history. Revolution is the permanent possibility of all up-to-date existing things. Man is a species being, not only because in practice and in theory he adopts the species as his object, but also because he treats himself as the actual living species. Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. Society does not consist of individuals, but expresses the sum of interrelations, the relations within which these individuals stand. Our epoch, the epoch of the bourgeoisie, possesses this distinctive feature. It has simplified the class antagonisms. In proportion as the exploitation of one individual by another will also be put an end to, the exploitation of one nation by another will also be put an end to. Justice is the ultimate morality of the state. The proletarian movement is the self-conscious, independent movement of the immense majority. Every step of real movement is more important than a dozen programs. The first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of ruling class. The socialist transformation of society is the emancipation of the working class. In place of the old bourgeois society, with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. The capitalist's command over labor is the wage system. The worker's command over capital is collective ownership. Surplus value is the secret of profit-making in a capitalist society. Machinery does not just act as a superior power. It is superior to power. The value of a commodity is determined by the socially necessary labor time embodied in it. The working class did not expect miracles from the commune. They have no ready-made utopias to introduce par decret du peuple. The proletarian is without property. His relation to his wife and children has no longer anything in common with the bourgeois family relations. The proletarian movement is the self-conscious, independent movement of the immense majority. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. The state is nothing but a machine for the oppression of one class by another. The state is the form in which the individuals of a ruling class assert their common interests. The working class is revolutionary or it is nothing. The value of labor power is determined by the value of the commodities necessary for the maintenance of the laborer. The wealth of those societies in which the capitalist mode of production prevails presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities. The ruling ideas of each age have ever been the ideas of its ruling class. Accumulation of wealth at one pole is at the same time accumulation of poverty, agony of toil, slavery, ignorance, brutality, mental degradation at the opposite pole. The bourgeoisie and the proletariat represent the two irreconcilable antipodes of modern society. The ruling class will use any means to protect their power, even if it means suppressing the working class. The bourgeoisie cannot exist without constantly revolutionizing the instruments of production. A commodity appears at first sight an extremely obvious, trivial thing, but its analysis brings out that it is a very strange thing. The more the worker produces, the less he has to consume. The more value he creates, the more valueless, the more worthless he becomes. Capital is dead labor, that, vampire-like, only lives by sucking living labor. Revolution is the driving power of history, but it is also its goal. The tradition of all dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brains of the living. The ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas. Society is no more than the collective product of individual desires and actions. The capitalist system is past its prime. Its social relations are outdated and unsustainable. The human essence is the true collectivity of man. Labor power is the worker's conscious life activity, the realization of his own nature. Labor is the creative source of wealth and culture. The ruling ideas are nothing more than the ideal expression of the dominant material relationships. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. The proletarian revolution is the overthrow of the old ruling classes. The emancipation of the working class can only be achieved by the working class itself. The proletariat has nothing to lose but its chains. They have a world to win. Capital is dead labor, which, vampire-like, lives only by sucking living labor, and lives the more labor it sucks. The working class is the product of capital and its system of wages. Labor is external to the worker, i.e., it does not belong to his intrinsic nature, that in his work, therefore, he does not affirm himself but denies himself. The concentration of wealth and the polarization of society are inherent in the capitalist mode of production.